This is Walmart's cheapest brand new desktop PC, and today we're going to find out if it's a hidden budget gem or just a very large potato. Oh, I got a big one for you this week. Hey everyone, Retro Tech Dad here, and this gigantic box arrived the other day from Walmart.com, and you know what that means. There's a good chance we've got some potato gaming on the way. So much like a video I did recently where I scoured Walmart's website for the cheapest brand new Windows laptop, I did the same thing again, but this time around I wanted to find the cheapest brand new Windows desktop PC. And like before, I specifically was looking for a desktop PC that is in stock, brand new, and sold by Walmart directly, which means no third-party sellers, no refurbished computers, and nothing open box. As you probably have guessed by now, this massive box contains the PC that I ended up buying off Walmart's website, which arrived nicely packaged with a generous amount of bubble packaging. So I stumbled on this HP 21.45-inch all-in-one PC, and I guess I don't know what I was expecting to find, but I was a bit surprised that this ended up being the cheapest computer available with a regular price of $399, and I did pick this up during a sale for $349. Now, if you happen to be interested in this computer, please do not buy it from Walmart since it's available over on eBay as an open box unit for half the price, especially if you can catch it on a sale for under $200 as this listing shows, which I will have linked in my description. The things that I do for research. I'm starting to get worried that I just like torturing myself with these very underpowered computers. So what does the cheapest desktop PC from Walmart get you? And if you guessed a 21.45-inch display, you have earned yourself a well-deserved cookie. This is a VA panel with anti-glare coating that runs at a resolution of 1920 by 1080. So at least we're not stuck with a 1366 by 768 resolution like on that HP laptop from Walmart. I will say that the panel surprised me. The picture is pretty solid and does provide good viewing angles, but it does only top out at about 250 nits of brightness, which is fine for indoor usage and obviously where it'll be used, but I will say that I kept it mostly at its max brightness. HP does claim that the panel here provides 99% sRGB coverage. Now since this is an all-in-one, we've got some things to talk about under the hood. And with this PC, we get an Intel N200 based on the Alder Lake N architecture and features 4 cores and 4 threads with a max turbo frequency of 3.7 GHz and the Intel UHD Graphics with 32 execution units. The N200 is actually an interesting chip, and on this specific unit it does seem like we're locked to a 10-watt TDP, and I have looked at the N series chips in the past with a pretty deep dive into the N150, which has some similarities to this N200, and so that video does provide a good idea of what one might expect when it comes to gaming and emulation, but I think many will be pleasantly surprised by what a 10-watt chip can achieve. In terms of RAM, we've got 8GB of DDR5 memory and then 128GB of internal storage. On board, there's Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.3, as well as a generous amount of ports, including 2 USB-A 2.0 ports, 2 USB-A 3.2 Gen 1 ports, a USB Type-C 3.2 Gen 2 port, HDMI out, Ethernet, and a 3.5mm audio combo port. Lastly, we got some built-in stereo speakers that are downfiring and just average at best and sound very flat, and again, it's just serviceable, but this computer would definitely benefit from some external speakers. Alright, let's dive into this box and see what we get here. And besides for a generous amount of cardboard, we have the included stand and base, which naturally is needed since this is an all-in-one unit that combines everything into the display area. This set comes with a no-frills wireless mouse as well as a wireless keyboard, and we even get a set of Duracell batteries. That's gotta be worth at least $2 right there. The mouse and keyboard set is nothing fancy, but definitely serviceable, and at least you don't need to run out and buy these separately. We've got a 65-watt power adapter that is quite compact with a separate cable that plugs into it, and then your usual assortment of inserts, including my favorite fold-out insert that becomes jumbo-sized. So this is interesting. Just like the HP laptop from Walmart, we've got an insert with Walmart and HP branding on it, and again, I think there's definitely some type of cooperation that's going on here. And finally, we have the actual monitor and computer unit, and let me get this box out of the way so that I can properly remove the protective sleeve from the unit. I have to say I actually really like the design. It's clean and looks fairly modern. I don't think there's anything particularly egregious about the design, and it should look nice in a family room where I imagine many of these will end up. So I figure since I have the unit like this without the stand and all of that attached, and because I'm crazy and don't mind potentially destroying a brand new computer, I might as well take this opportunity to go under the hood and see how everything looks, and maybe find some nice surprises. These all-in-one units can be a bit tricky to get into, and at first I had to figure out the proper entry point, and so this might actually help someone out if they're trying to gain access to the guts. The first area to start off with here is actually the trim that goes over the top portion of the monitor where the webcam lives, and this does come off pretty easily. I used a pick to pop it off, but this is probably the easiest portion of this disassembly process. Now inside this exposed top portion are 3 screws that need to be removed, which will then allow us to pop the display out of its chassis. The way to do this is to use these pull tabs that are on the left and right side of the chassis and are marked as such here. I just used a spudger that I had to gently lift up those pull tabs, and now once you understand how these work, the process isn't as daunting as it might seem, but basically use the pull tabs and then gently pull back on the plastic from the back of the unit, and you will start to hear the tabs separating in the shell. I did this to both sides, and then you can see that the monitor gets freed from the rest of the unit and it lifts out of the chassis. Of course, I had to be careful here since there are some connectors to be mindful of, and make sure that you lift the tab on the connector and then remove the cable. I'm now able to get the display out of the way, and now we can examine the internals. So the first thing that we can see here is that the unit is passively cooled, and since this maxes out at 10 watts, that makes sense since it will never really get that hot even under load. We do have user replaceable RAM, and as we already know, we get 8GB with this unit, and this is using a Samsung branded stick. Now this only has one slot, but the Intel N series chips only use a single channel of RAM, and so I can understand the lack of dual slots here, since it's not needed. But you can put more RAM in here if you want to, but I imagine most won't bother with it. Now unfortunately, we don't get any type of user replaceable storage, and so the 128GB is what we're stuck with, which is easily the worst part of all this since 128GB is fairly small in today's world. But thankfully we have a generous amount of ports that we can hook up external drives fairly easily. I'm going to quickly remove the screws here from the board so we can take a look at the other side of it, and so let's enjoy ourselves a nice little time-lapse moment. With the screws removed, you can see we have thermal pads that were underneath the motherboard, and the entire bottom portion is a metal bracket which is used for heat dissipation. Okay, so I guess it's time to find out if I broke this computer or not, and put this all back together. Let's go ahead and plug this in and power it on for the first time. And well, that's a good sign. As expected, we have the Windows 11 setup process greeting us for the first time, and this does ship in S mode out of the box, and so once we get past this, one of the first things I'm going to do is take this system out of S mode. Now before we do anything else, let's just take a moment to see what's included here as part of the stock Windows 11 install. And as expected, we have a ton of HP preloaded software, as well as something related to Walmart, and then all of the Microsoft junk. As much as I would love to see this ship with more than 8GB of RAM, the experience for light tasks like web browsing and even viewing YouTube videos will be fine for most users, and really this is a computer that will probably end up in homes for this purpose, and not pushing it like we're going to do with gaming and emulation. However, I think many will find themselves hitting a wall because of the limited environment that S mode provides, and eventually will find themselves with a screen like this. And yes, you better believe that I will be switching out of S mode because I can't even install something like Steam with this mode on. So with S mode turned off, I can now also run some Windows 11 scripts like Chris Titus Tech's Windows Utility, which will let me uninstall and tweak the Windows 11 environment to get rid of a lot of the junk that I don't want here. Typically, I would just reinstall with a lighter Windows build or some flavor of Linux, but I opted to go with this approach for this experiment since I want to get the most out of the gaming side, which isn't as performant for these Intel chips in Linux. And now that I've got Steam installed, we are now ready for some gaming on the Intel N200, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my controller. And first things first, let's get the Doom portion out of the way, and based on the intro, we already know that this can handle the original Doom without issue. But I bet you didn't expect that it can run a more modern version of Doom like Doom 2016, which was a game I featured in that N150 showcase video, and so I personally was less surprised by this. Now, if you ever wondered what the Nintendo Switch version of Doom 2016 looks like on PC, look no further since we are running this game using fairly potato settings at 720p with a 70% resolution scale, the lowest settings possible, and a 30 frames per second cap. But given that we're running at 10 watts, which by the way, the numbers for the GPU and CPU are not added together here since it's read as the same thing in the software, I do think it's generally crazy to see a game like Doom running on this setup, and so this helps us set our expectations in terms of what we can get away with when it comes to PC gaming. And as many know, one of the things I love to do here on this channel is show you what's possible, and given that we're talking about the PC platform, we have access to tens of thousands of games that can be enjoyed without any issue, and even many more recent indie darlings like Mina the Hollower, Megabonk, and Vampire Crawlers all fare pretty well here, and that's at the native resolution of 1080p, but with the lowest settings where applicable. Basically, this all-in-one PC will do very well for you if you enjoy many of these kinds of games, but also plenty of older PC games will fare well from years past. I imagine that many will end up with this computer as a family PC or perhaps as your first computer, and basically if you do end up with one of these, not all hope is lost, and the Intel N200 can handle more than expected. Now, Doom 2016 wasn't quite potato mode enough for me, and I did go as far as testing something newer and more demanding than those other indie games such as Super Meat Boy 3D. But it's clear that something this new is where we start to see things break down, and while it can be done, it's definitely at the cost of image quality and overall performance, considering this is running at the lowest settings with 30 frames per second at a 720p resolution and a 60% render scale for the ultimate in potato. Also, one last thing, I did test Fortnite, and I actually did it before I ran any of those scripts to clean up Windows, and the game couldn't even launch in-game until I used those scripts, and so it does show how something like the Chris Titus script can help with performance in Windows, but in terms of Fortnite, which is a game someone somewhere will probably end up trying to play on here, the experience is, as expected, pretty mediocre. And this is definitely a case where we were pushing up against the 8GB of RAM, since again, before the scripts, we had all sorts of issues, including one case where it couldn't launch because of lack of said RAM. Now, there's still plenty of more gaming that this setup can provide, and definitely more so when we start to consider emulation, since the N200 is quite capable and will handle platforms prior to the 6th generation with ease. And so things like Nintendo 64, for example, will be a very solid experience on this all-in-one. But what I think many might not expect is that this system will fare quite well with the 6th generation of consoles, including the PlayStation 2 using PCSX2, which even something demanding like God of War 2 will run mostly at full speed, with some minor dips here and there at the PS2's native resolution with the PAL region version here, which does mean that a good portion of the PS2 library will run here, including lighter games at an upscaled resolution. It gets even better when we shift over to the Nintendo side and check out some emulation for both the GameCube and Wii using a Dolphin emulator, which is quite performant with the N200. For GameCube, I'm able to push the upscaling to as much as 3 times the original GameCube resolution, which is the equivalent of 1080p, and so it matches the native resolution of the panel here on this HP all-in-one. And so games like Soul Calibur 2 and Wave Race Blue Storm, 2 favorites of mine, run very well and look beautiful at this resolution. But again, this bodes well for a large portion of the GameCube library. When it comes to the Wii, using the same Dolphin emulator, expect to turn the resolution scaling down a little bit just because it's slightly more demanding compared to GameCube, but games like Super Mario Galaxy 2 and even Sonic Colors, which I have here at 2 times the native Wii resolution, are holding on and playing at or close to full speed. I did also check out some PlayStation Portable emulation with the amazing PPSSPP emulator, and unsurprisingly, given that the N200 can handle a lot of the 6th generation consoles, I knew that PSP would fare very well here, and these games look great, especially when we can make use of the upscaling, and for these games I just went ahead and matched it to the resolution of the panel, so I am set to 4 times the native resolution, and we even have power on hand to handle things like 60 frames per second patches, which I have here for Jeanne d'Arc, which by the way is part of Retro Handheld's Game of the Month, where we feature a selection of 3 games each month that you can complete, earn points, and redeem those points for awesome prizes. Definitely check out their Discord for more information. I always have it linked in my description if you enjoy the community aspect of gaming. So before we head on out of here, I naturally had to push it to the limit and check out some Nintendo Switch emulation with the Eden emulator, and since we are stuck at that 10W TDP for this chip, I expected that performance wasn't going to be as good as I've seen on some of the other N-series chips. But for Switch, you might be surprised to find out that a lot of lighter games like Golf Story, an awesome Switch exclusive that can only be played on PC thanks to emulation, does run quite well. I'd say that based on this, expect the absolute lightest games to run, and consider it a fun bonus platform to explore. Much like the PlayStation 3, and of course for longtime viewers of the channel, you probably already expected that I tested PS3 with the RPCS3 emulator on this humble all-in-one PC. And much like Switch emulation, we can get away with lighter, PSN-style games like Hardcore Uprising, a hidden gem that is actually part of the Contra franchise, as well as some amazing games like Dragon's Crown from Vanillaware. And so once again, we are opening up the amount of games that can be playable on a computer that maybe one wouldn't necessarily expect to run anything at all. And so with that, it's time to wrap things up here. And like in past videos, this was a fun experiment to explore what the cheapest desktop PC currently from Walmart offers us. And again, like I said in the beginning, if you are actually considering this PC, please don't buy it from Walmart, since the same one is available open box from eBay for half the price. And at that price, it's actually not a bad option as a spare computer or just a general computer for basic needs that can be stretched to play some games. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I am the Retro Tech Dad, and thank you so much for watching.